Oh, I think you're ahead of me, and I thought I was ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm 80%. No, not 80%. Like 75% through New Game Plus.
Is that new?
Oh,
oh wait, no, I don't want to play with.
I've been
144 for me.
Yeah, I've been testing a shit ton about the game as well.
All right, well, good afternoon, folks. Welcome to Smudtalk number 23. This is Elden Ring, and we're talking with our resident Elden Ring player, CrazyPhilosopher, and a special guest, Marc the Cyborg. Thanks for coming in, guys.
Hello there. Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, if you guys have not been around any of the gaming sites in the past 2 weeks, Elden Ring came out. It is perchance going to be Game of the Year. It's already hit the highest rating on OpenCritic at a 96 out of every other game ever reviewed, so it's the highest rated game. And it's just, there's so much news, there's so many stories, there's so much gameplay, there secrets, interviews, all kinds of content. This is the first time I'm talking about it because it's just big, and I had to get someone who knows it. Apparently, the two guys on the panel have passed the game already, which is great. Good to hear. So I get some good opinions going on why this game is taking over our attention so much, because there's lots of great games coming out. I think, what was it? Dying Light 2 came out last month. Haven't heard of
Horizon Zero Dawn came a week before, I think.
Haven't heard of it.
I'm going to throw a vote out for Sifu. Sifu was really good.
Oh yeah, that's right. And then
I have not played that one.
And then it went away. I don't know anything about it anymore. It just, everything's been Elden Ring. So that's just how the news cycles work. But hopefully we're going to get a review up on our website about that. And CrazyPhilosopher will be slowly building that, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
But hey, let's talk about the game. Now, there's lots of things to talk about. I'm sure you guys are oozing with ideas and concepts to talk about. I'm curious.
One thing I would like to say first, be careful if you Google the game. If you Google just Elden Ring, one of the first articles that pops up is literally the end boss. Like literally in the title, spoiled the end boss.
Okay.
So if you're wary of spoilers, just be aware that if you Google it.
All right. Well, what we have playing in the background is the speed run for the current fastest speed run, which is about 27 minutes. And the first thing I want to ask was, like, there's games like this that we saw with Breath of the Wild where you can just go up to Ganon and fight him if you're good enough. Is this like that kind of game? You just don't bother with the exploration, don't bother with all this crazy other grinding and RPG mechanics and getting the best gear. Just go straight, don't waste your time. Is this one of those games, or is it worth your while? Like, what's the lowdown here?
I personally think it's absolutely worth your while to take your time with it. I mean, my 145 hours in this game is one playthrough. Like, I mean, actually, technically, I have a few hours on PS5 again. But I think the tricky thing would be how it would actually work. As far as like being able to get through the entire game in that amount of time. I haven't watched any of the speed runs, but I'm assuming that you've got to find a way to power level yourself and make yourself incredibly powerful, or it's a new game plus run. Is that it?
Skip. I think the thing is either also skill based, because I know, for example, with some bosses you can do, Soul Level 1 was always possible, but you can do it and it's very viable. Some items give you, basically, I think if I remember correctly, you cannot level and with items get your character stats basically almost to level 60. Just through items and great runes and stuff like that, so you can do that. But also, the speedruns involve quite a few skips, so wrong warping and stuff like that. So dying in a specific place, which then allows you to respawn in a place you're not supposed to be yet.
Right, that's what's happening on the screen right now. He just, as soon as he started up the game, he died. I was like, what was he doing?
Well, I think in that intro sequence, you have to die. Normally, you'd get killed by the grafted scion, but he just ran and jumped off a cliff by the look of it.
I tried it out in a new game. Create a new character once I knew the moveset of the Scion a bit better, and they bait you. If you actually manage to beat him, you can walk off to a cliff, and then the cliff breaks underneath you, and you die.
Yeah, I'm actually I did that last night on as I just fired up my new game plus run. I was like, I'm gonna fight the Grafted Scion, see if I can beat him, and I beat him. Although it was touch and go. He had me down to what must have been like 10 HP, and killed him. And then I was like, okay, I'm gonna walk through this door,
So-
and then just the floor crumbles beneath you, and it's like, oh, okay.
So to your questions, Matt, I think you can kind of just bum rush to specific things you have to do. There are a couple of bosses you actually have to do. Well, which ones? There's a number that you have to do, basically, not specific bosses, but also it's kind of complicated to explain, but you basically need to get a certain amount of great runes to finish the game. And you can't just bum rush that. But exploration definitely is worthwhile, as Mark said. It's a lot of fun to explore. I also find riding the horse a lot of fun because the controls of the horse are pretty tight, and the double jump is just fun to use.
Yeah, double jumping is like the best thing in all of video games, and this is the first time I've ever been able to double jump a horse.
Yeah.
It was the special sauce for horseback riding in video games.
The special thing about it is also you can switch direction with the double jump. So if you accidentally run off a cliff, you can just 180 back. Has saved my ass several times.
It is a nice little saving grace. Be like, oh, okay, that's a bottomless cliff. Oh, good thing I have a second jump.
Yeah.
Well, I did read an article yesterday about the PvP, which is obviously a big component. And I was telling this to CrazyPhilosopher before the stream that some guy took 86 million runes from some other player, and I don't know, he started a new game or whatever he did. But it's like, that sounds like a lot of unbalanced if you can just take whatever some other guy has. But I guess that's the point of PvP anyway.
Yeah, it is kind of... It basically is an insane chance that he ran into a person with that many runes.
Okay.
Because usually you don't have that many on you.
I was about to say, who's walking around? That's kind of like just walking around with 50 grand of cash in your pocket. Like,
yeah, because
it's sort of a ridiculous amount to just have on you.
I mean, having played these games, you just sometimes getting into a state and you suddenly realize, oh shit, I have 200,000 runes, which would be like 5 or 6 level at this point. Oh, well, I should go spend them. You die and you're like, oh crap. But then it happens regularly, and at some point you're like, well, I can get these runes again at some point.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of playthroughs of people picking up new gear and they can't equip it, and they're like, wait a second, let me just go to my inventory, put on some runes or whatever, get the right stats going, and then it takes like 10 minutes to figure, oh yeah, okay, I need this, I got to put this on. It's like, okay, there's a lot of min-maxing in this game, but it seems like you're just getting bigger and bigger and stronger. Like you're not going weaker. It's always a weapon or a gear that just gets you stronger and faster, or a new technique.
Well, sometimes you can go quote-unquote weaker, but the moveset is better to your playstyle, so you end up doing more damage because the moveset fits you better, even though raw damage would be lower.
Or you end up taking less damage because you can move around better than wearing heavy gear that makes your roll all weird and fat.
Right, and that was a technique that speedrunners did with all the other FromSoft games where they have no armor and they're just rolling around, have all this stamina regen, they're just going as quickly as possible. So,
yeah, well, basically naked with a club.
Yeah, and obviously they never get hit because they've been doing this for so long, they've been practicing so much. And they get the best weapon they could find at the direction they're going. I think one of them was a ring, I think, in like Dark Souls 3 or something, it was a random drop. He was lucky he got it, which was beefed up his attack power. So there's lots of exploits and things like that, which I'm not even sure what this guy's doing right now.
He's save and quitting. He's basically wrong warping, I think.
I'm not sure. I think has he even hit a boss yet? I don't know if he's hit
No, he's
I
just
haven't
running.
seen him fight anything yet. Yeah. Although it looks like, is that just I think that might just be like a Streamlabs the thing that he had come up, because I was like, I've never seen that Elden Ring logo notification up there. I was like, what is that?
That's a Streamlab. That's an overlay thing. There was a certain event going on, and they had that overlay as well.
All right. Okay. So tell me, what's the best part of the game? Because everyone enjoys it for their own reasons. They like the exploration style of gamer. There's the combat style of gamer. There's the lore of people like reading all about the stories and all the characters, the NPCs you get to meet. What is the thing that, aside from combat, which I think is the obvious, like what's the thing is it's like this is a classic, this is going to last a good 20 years in our history. We're going to keep referencing it all these years as they go by. What is the one thing that you enjoy?
One thing I definitely say is it's a bit of a how should I say that? It's the whole package of it. One thing I definitely would say is level design. I think they did a fantastic job with level design. Not only the open world, but how it works so well with they call it legacy dungeon, which are the areas that are more designed like old school Souls style stuff. But because you now have the jump button, so you can now jump around, so they had to adjust for that as well. And with my New Game Plus run through, I've just noticed that you can go, even the quote unquote closed up the legacy dungeons are very seamless. First off, very seamless with the open world, and extremely versatile and open how you can tackle them and go through them. Like Stormvale Castle, I've been in the place several times by now, and every time I find a new way how to go about the thing. It's just, I find that very, very impressive. To basically every time you go to a place, you find new paths, new ways to go from there to there, new jumps to cover maybe areas you've already been, but you're like, oh, I could have done that jump there and would have been faster over here.
So it sounds like what other reviewers have talked about, the level design, the fact that it's an open world, that it's a lot different from other Souls games, that you can freely go wherever you need to go, like Breath of the Wild, and just explore without a map system telling you where to go.
Not only that, but also how compact, as I said, the dungeons, which are more like Souls-type levels.
Yeah.
Where you can't use the horse, and they are incredibly intricately designed. It's amazing how cool the level design is when you realize, oh, I've walked this whole thing, but if I had done that jump over there, I would have been here in, half the time.
And that's the thing with some of the Souls players, because they think very linearly to go to the first boss to get stronger. And in Elden Ring, you get destroyed if you go straight to the boss. It's like, I can't go there. I got to explore and level up first. So it seems to have shifted the gameplay as a result of level design to encourage.
I mean, also, there are several bosses that can be your first boss.
Yeah, and I think that's the integration of difficulty into the actual design of the game is very, very important for that reason. And it's one of the reasons that I'm a hard line, like, do not have easy modes in these games person, because of things like if you had an easy mode where you were effectively unkillable, or you were very hard to kill and you did major damage right out the gate, you could walk up to the Tree Sentinel, which is the first boss tier character that you come across once you exit the tutorial, and beat him. And then it's like, oh, okay, so I can just walk straight ahead. But that Tree Sentinel is there specifically to show you that if you just walk up to the biggest, baddest guy in the prison yard and try to pick a fight with them, you're going to get absolutely stomped unless you either really know what you're doing or have taken the time to make yourself stronger and figure out what your play style is and acquire some better gear. So you're encouraged to explore the open world by the difficulty. And it's an interesting way in which this is integrated into Dark Souls, or the Dark Souls formula, or Demon Souls, whatever you want to call more Dark Souls, though, where it's non-linear to a degree, but there still is a path you need to be on. There's effectively a correct order for bosses. Like, you can do a bit of sequence breaking, but for the most part, it's the first boss that you fight in Dark Souls, aside from the Asylum Demon, which is a tutorial boss, is the Taurus Demon. And everyone will fight the Taurus Demon first until you get really advanced, and then you can do weird things like go and fight Pinwheel first. But in Elden Ring, that kind of gets amped up to the point that you can be guided by the difficulty, because if you hit a wall, say Margit is the first kind of major boss in Stormvale Castle in this game, you get just stomped by Margit and then say, oh, okay, well maybe instead I'm going to go south instead of north, and we'll see what's going on in the south. And then there's a less difficult castle, a less difficult boss for you to fight. And through doing that, you'll gain runes, you'll gain some upgrade materials, you might find some new weapons and decide, hey, looks like I'm not a sword and shield guy, I'm a spearman. And like I like being at a bit more of a range, and this really suits my playstyle better. You figure those things out, and then you turn north, go back to Margit, and all of a sudden he becomes manageable. So I think it's the way that the freedom of exploration combines with the level design and the difficulty of this kind of seems like the game that From Software was always trying to make, but just now they actually have like the resources and the time and the support to do it. So I don't know, like me being like a pretty big Souls fan, this is there's a lot of recency bias in there, but like I think it's going to be really hard for me for a long time to say like what's your top 5 video games of all time, and to not have this one at least in that 5, because it's like, man, this is a really damn good video game.
Yeah, I was talking to some people about the genre as a whole, and they said this is probably the best Souls game to get started with, or probably the best Souls game to play if you are a Souls experienced player. There's so much to love, and it's easier to get into. And with that, they changed a lot of the combat with magic, as I believe you talked about before, I think prior to the stream. You said that magic in summoning is such a big part, as opposed to going a strength build or a combat build. So is that in any way influence the way the levels can progress, like the challenges? Or it's like, I can just always summon, I can always use magic, and I'll be fine?
See, the summoning is restricted still, so it's actually not too much different in that you can only summon your spirit ashes, which are basically your NPC summons. So it's a summon that is not another player, because the multiplayer also kind of works with summoning, which is why it gets a bit tricky to explain. But bosses, almost every single boss you can definitely summon, and it basically gives you, at the absolute least, another target or 2 or 3, depending on which summon it is, for the boss to focus on, which can be a blessing or a curse, because a lot of the dodge patterns in From Software bosses are geared around a one-on-one fight where the boss is facing you. And sometimes if you have a second target that can aggro the boss, it will make it so that they'll just show their back to you and you can wail away at them and they become super easy. But other times you won't know when their AoE attacks are coming, because they're not facing the right direction, so you're not going to see their predictive animations in the right way. So there are still elements of the summoning that balance out the difficulty a bit. That being said, especially I think if you have a higher level summon, it does make the game significantly easier. And the fact that you can attach different weapon arts to different weapons. Oh, I guess we just lost CrazyPhilosopher. Oh, no. He said his internet cut out in the Discord.
Right.
But anyways, the fact that you can just attach different weapon arts to different weapons. You can't attach any weapon art to any weapon, but a weapon art is effectively a spell, or it's a skill that uses either mana or health, depending on what it is. And being able to just modify your weapon set in order to attach what's effectively a different spell to a melee class really does kind of change things up. And for 90% of the game, I totally ignored it. Like I had this wind summon, like kind of stomp thing where this like tornado came around me for a second. It hardly did any damage. It wasn't very effective. And I've always played like light kind of thief builds where I'm rolling away from damage. I hardly ever use shields in any of the other games. I would use like a buckler to do parries with, but never a tank shield. And for the first time in Elden Ring, because of a couple different systems, like the ability to equip different weapon arts, and there's a new system for blocking too called guard counters, where if you block damage with a shield, you can then respond with a heavy attack that basically cuts out 70% or so of the animation time, so you can counterattack much more easily in this game. And those elements kind of have combined to make it so that a melee build is, I wouldn't say any more viable than it's ever been, because melee builds have always been viable, but you can become something that is almost kind of more like a battle mage than, or like a barbarian from Diablo 2 or something, where it's like you are a melee class, but you've also got like the shouts and stuff that are effectively spells, even though you're not a mage, right? So I don't know. I think that it's the new systems have made the lines between the classes blur in a way that at least I didn't personally see in the previous Dark Souls games or Demon Souls.
A thing that adds to that, there are now way more weapons with double scaling. There are way more melee weapons that require faith or intelligence than in previous games. At least it seems. But also one thing that I wanted to mention, but I couldn't because my internet cut out. In my New Game Plus, I tried it out, and your first boss literally can be Radahn. So you can just
run right up
to him, go right there, go to him and say hello.
I would say that's one of my goals for like this playthrough, like my New Game Plus playthrough. I really want a 1v1 Radahn. And just like be like, I want to do it without summoning any of the other people in the battle. And
did you summon Patches?
I summoned everybody. I was running around that battle constantly summoning. Every time I would see yellow on the ground, I would hit it because I'm like, okay, yeah, this is how this is happening. And I didn't leave my horse the entire battle if I could avoid it.
The one thing I just really like, maybe for Smart, if you don't know, Patches is kind of a recurring character as in every Souls game directed by Miyazaki. And he's always a bit of an ass. A lovable asshole, basically. And if you summon him in this boss fight, he immediately quits. So he immediately
he just goes back to his own world. But actually, the first thing I did when I fired up the New Game Plus run and got into the world was go to I think it's Mirkwood Cave, whatever patches the cave that you find him in.
Yeah.
And I killed him because I regretted not killing him. Because in all the other Souls games, you know what? Actually, there's a playlist on my channel that's just called Marc Souls. If you look at my playthroughs of Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3, and actually my Demon Souls videos aren't on there yet. I will put them up there though. I'm always wearing like the standard leather armor.
Yeah.
Patches is wearing it, and he's wearing a really cool version of it that has throwing knives on the arm that sort of look like Judo's knives from Berserk. And I was like, oh man, this is such a cool version of that armor. I can't wait. And I let Patches live. And there's no way to get it
when you kill him.
Yeah, there's no other way. No one sells it in the game. In Dark Souls 3, you can't get it until you come across Patches, and then you can buy it off him. But he sells stuff, but he wouldn't sell you the armor. And I was like, the second I get the New Game Plus, the first thing I'm doing is killing Patches, and that's exactly what I did. And then I went to sleep last night.
I only found out after letting him live in New Game Plus.
Oh man, that sucks. I guess playthrough number 3 if you want the leather armor.
Yeah, well, I probably will.
I just noticed in Marc the Cyborg's hero banner on his YouTube channel is him wielding the greatsword.
Yeah, and that's Caffeine Tweaker did that art for me. She's works with PSA Sitch and Adam Friended on their comic book.
Oh, really?
But she's a great artist and did a little kind of Dark Souls / Berserk style drawing. Me and my podcast host, Cool Guy Fonts. And actually my wife's there with our 2 little dogs too, is the person that Cool Guy Fonts summoned to stop me because I'm the invader in the picture.
I have noticed there's a few, I wouldn't say they're exploits, but there's I think there's spells that you assign to your weapons, or you find a weapon that has them innately.
Yeah, weapon arts.
Weapon arts, like they seem to be, I wouldn't say exploits, but they look like they're cheats. Like you press a button, you disappear for a second, and all of a sudden you have this slash, and the enemies don't even detect you. They're just sort of surprised they got hit. You do it again, and they get hit again. Obviously, they die if they're a normal enemy. Is this like how people cheese the game? Like use these skill arts over and over again, or is it like
well, there's a certain limit to how often you can use them, and not all of them are kind of that cheaty. Some of them are just very useful. Like if you very much want to have a shield and tank, you can get a certain art that improves your block and so you can do stuff like that, which would then work for that kind of build. But of course, there's some things like I think the Bloodhound step is the one that makes you disappear and reappear. That one is incredibly powerful and often used because some bosses, especially one specific boss, heals when hitting you.
Oh my god.
Yeah, Millennia.
Yeah, it's
I just beat her today, and I'm not proud to say I kind of had to summon, but I definitely
I absolutely summoned for Millennia. I didn't summon a human player. I just used my Mimic Veil summon, but
yeah.
Millennia, I was like, gloves are off for her. I'm going as cheap as I can possibly do. I was just spamming my Hoarfrost Stomp, and I used my level 10 Mimic Veil. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, then again,
it's on.
I tend to be a bit like that in pretty much every Souls game I've played, like Dark Souls 3. I have so many hours now that I just can't, I can play through it almost blind. But I always, just one thing I do, just when it comes out, I go all the way to New Game Plus 7, and then at some point I just, solo them anyways, because I learned the bosses well enough.
Yeah.
So it's just like, well, I don't need to summon, I know how this works now.
Yeah, and I didn't want to summon for most of the game. I think it was just the clergy beast, or the beast clergyman. That was the first one. I'm pretty sure that's the first one I summoned on, because the Godskin duo, which actually, funny enough, is who they're fighting now, and actually the speedrunner guy, and he's using the Hoarfrost Stomp too. That's the weapon art that I used to kill these guys, because they were giving me tons of trouble. And
Moonveil is very strong against them.
I kind of cheesed them with the Hoarfrost Stomp, and then Beast Clergyman was giving me some trouble, so I used the summon. And then I did a bunch of fights that I was way over leveled for, so I didn't do anything crazy for those. I fought them all. I think I'll probably upload a super cut of just those back-to-back end game boss fights. And then I fought Millennia, and I tried fighting her legit once, and then I realized that this boss's thing, which is the boss who you saw her in the reveal trailer. She's kind of a Valkyrie with red hair. Very, very aesthetically pleasing character. She's got this prosthetic arm, and she's the statue.
The figure is amazing.
Yeah, the statue that came with the collector's edition is her as well. And every single bit of damage she does to you heals her. And you're just oh my god!
Not damage. Even if you block and take no damage, she heals. In new games, she heals for 300 health every hit she deals.
Oh my god! Yeah. Oh, well, and then that would, because the only way I beat her
even
was
when you
summoning.
block, that's one thing I find pretty. That's one thing where I would say, do you have to heal when you're not actually damaging me?
I honestly think part of the reason she's designed that way is so summoning almost becomes a liability.
Yeah.
Because if you summon another character, especially an AI, that you have to you have to worry about how well they're going to be able to dodge, because they basically don't dodge. And you've essentially spawned a healing item in for the boss you're trying to kill. So I don't know. I still summoned a level 10 Mimic Veil and was just spamming my Hoarfrost Stomp. Actually, I have that uploaded to my channel now. I could make it public soon. But
one thing I want to try is the parrying strat, because she has some pretty obvious parry tells. The thing is, you have to parry her 3 times. You have to parry her 3 times in a row to get the repulse.
I was trying. I brought my buckler in there to see if, hey, maybe I could parry her and that'll work. I could not even land a single parry on her. I don't know if I just really wasn't getting her timing.
Lobos Jr. just recently has done is doing his level 1 run.
Oh.
And he just recently, 1 or 2 days ago, but you beat her just being level 1, and you used parry strat.
All right, that might be what happens the next time I get to her. Let's see if I can 1v1 Millennia and just parry every single hit.
It almost becomes a bit like a Sekiro-esque because of the parries, how it's almost like the deflecting. It's kind of, at
least until now, Sekiro was my favorite From Software game, and I would never say it's the best. Because Sekiro, the kind of crazy thing about Sekiro is I think it has the best combat by far. You could argue that it has the best story, depending on what you want out of a story in a video game. But it's the most traditional story of all the games they've made. It's got characters, a plot, you can follow it. The characters have dialogue. The main character has a name. But where I would say, like, I could never argue that it's objectively the best one, because a big part of these games are the build diversity and the multiplayer, the PvP, even not necessarily the PvP or summoning other players, but things like the messages on the ground and the bloodstains. Like, all of that kind of combines to make the From Software formula. So Sekiro, you can kind of tell that it did start out as being like a Tenchu game, and then they decided, hey, let's just make it a new IP. But then Miyazaki's like, yeah, but let's also make it play a lot like one of our games. Which,
well, it was developed alongside Elden Ring, which is
and I think Miyazaki's credited as director on Sekiro as well.
Yeah,
but I kind of wonder if he was spending most of his time with Elden Ring and then just popped over to Sekiro for like, let's see how this combat system's going.
I think in one interview you mentioned that with Elden Ring, due to its size, he had compartmentalized a bit more than in other games.
Well, I mean, he also got George R.R. Martin to help flesh out the lore, which I don't think he'd ever credited any other like authors or something. Though, I mean, I've mentioned Berserk a few times because I'm a huge fan of Berserk. But
well, he's heavily
clearly is also.
Well, that reminds me of an article I read about George R.R. Martin, because everyone was like, "Wow, it's going to be a game that's written by Martin," and he didn't really write it. He just inspired the introduction or the ideas for Miyazaki to say, "Oh, I like this. This is really cool. I'm going to do my own thing."
He wrote the lore, so he basically did write, quote unquote, a story. So he wrote the one could say the Silmarillion for this game.
Oh,
if you know what the Silmarillion was.
That's an interesting way of putting it. Yeah.
I would love it if they published his actual work for it.
I would love that too.
Because I honestly think that it's probably, I'm willing to bet that the truth, I have nothing to base this on other than speculation, but I'm willing to bet that the truth is probably more close to he and Miyazaki had like a meeting where it was like 8 hours of them sitting around a table kind of hashing out ideas with the translator, because I'm pretty sure Miyazaki doesn't speak English. And they like worked out things like, okay, let's have something that's kind of like Lord of the Rings. So it's okay, there's a powerful ring, the Elden Ring, and then it gets shattered, and maybe each of these demigods has a shard of it. And like,
you should say that. In one interview he mentioned that with George R. R. Martin, they just brought to him basic concepts like the Elden Ring and the Shattering, but things like the Earth Tree were an invention by George R. R. Martin.
Oh, really? Yes, that I almost thought that was definitely a Miyazaki thing, because
they gave him very vague. At least according to Miyazaki, they gave George R. R. Martin very vague concepts, and he really fleshed out. So all the characters were basically invention. Well, the lore characters, the gods, invention by George R. R. Martin. And the game is supposed to, which is kind of fantastic for me. You may not know that, Mark, but I'm a huge mythology nerd. And the world is supposed to be a mythological one, and I just love it, and that's kind of also part of why I like the world and lore of this game so much.
Well, yeah, there's definitely a lot of Norse
gods, heroes, dragons.
The funny thing about the lore with I think it's the demigods is they're all named after George R. R. Martin's initials.
Sure. GRRM.
Yeah.
And the standard order is Godric, Rennala, Radon, Morgoth. So it's GRRM, or the standard order for the first four. I don't know. That was kind of funny. Like, it's almost like a little, once you realize it though, it's like, oh man, like, as much as that's clever, it almost kind of sucks in its own way too. I don't know how I feel about it. It's like, it's a little on the nose.
By the way, did you encounter Margit in the Altus Plateau?
Yeah, I did. Oh, wait,
that one surprised me.
Wait, you fought him in the Altus Plateau? Because I fought him in the courtyard of the capital.
Okay, because in the Altus Plateau, there's a random NPC, but on the battlements.
That turns into Margit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I ran into one of those inside the gates of the capital, like just past the two tree sentinels that you fight.
Oh, just past the two? Yeah. I mean, to me, that's the battlement still outside the capital.
Oh, yeah. Would you consider that the Altus Plateau? Oh, yeah, okay. I kind of think of that gate being...
Oh, I just meant the entire region, the entire map region.
So then, it's probably the same guy we're talking about. I was wondering, I was like, oh, man, did they, like, randomize where Margit...
Yeah, I was just about to like, hey...
I thought
Yeah.
there was another crazy kind of similar like GRRM observation that do you guys know Sphere Hunter? She's a YouTuber. Also, she does a lot of like Resident Evil videos.
Okay.
Rings a bell, but
Yeah, she's pretty good. Like, does great videos. But she made this post on Twitter where she's like, "Hey, wait. So Margit, actually, sorry, wait. I should say minor spoilers, I guess, for the identity of a character that we're talking about. The first identity of Margit that is written is Margit, Margit, and then when
Yeah.
you fight the character again, the name is Morgot. So the idea is that the first time you fight Margit, you need to get good. And then the second time you fight Morgot, you've gotten good. So you've gotten good. And I'm just like, that's amazing. She's like, this is the worst thing I've ever posted on Twitter. And I'm like, I don't know. I think that's really funny and a good observation. But I don't know if it was intentional. But
with the spoiler being on screen, you know what's actually really funny? You can parry these supercharged up attacks, and it looks hilarious as fuck because he's charging up this massive attack, and then you go like, ding! And the weapon's just bashed to the side.
I'm almost sad about how quickly he just beat Radagon just now. I'm like, oh my god, this is what I was doing all of last night.
and the music is so good.
Yeah, I stayed up way too late fighting these two. Although he's playing cheaper than me. I don't think I was. I actually on this part of the fight, I might have been trying to just burn all my mana, but I made it so that hey, actually, that's a good thing to mention to Smut Boy, especially because if you haven't played too much of this game. So your flask, see how it says in the bottom of the screen, Flask of Crimson Tears.
Right.
So that is your healing item. And you have a certain amount of charges for it that you can allocate to either heal your health or your mana. So especially for this fight, I had 1 bar of mana because I basically put every single one of my flasks were in health because I found in the first phase against Radagon, it was even difficult for me to use this magic attack that he's using right now to any proper effect, because of the speed at which he attacks. So I'm like, okay, so I'm just gonna put all my money is going on health, and I'm just gonna try to tank as much damage as I can, heal as much as I can, and hopefully get through it. So I saved my mana for the second phase, and then tried to burn my Hoarfrost Stomp ability on the actual like giant boss thing that you fight at the end there. But so like I mean, that's kind of the way it's balanced. Like magic is powerful, but you kind of have to decide how much magic you want to use versus how much health you can heal.
Yeah, so one thing actually, there are some weapon arts that are very strong against some types of enemies and not so strong against others, like the Moon Whale weapon art, especially the R2 version of it, just staggers human enemies so quickly and does a lot of damage.
I heard a lot more one.
It's a lot more useful in the first phase of against Radagon instead of against the Elden Beast. But just today, after fighting Morgoth and getting into almost to the Fire Giant, I was like, oh well, let's kill Godric now in New Game Plus, and I used that weapon art and I just staggered him several times, and at the end I realized, oh, I didn't even heal. It's just like, it's kind of ridiculous how one specific art can change the game.
Well, my strategy against Radagon is I was trying to think of ways that I use a big, huge, heavy greatsword, and was trying to find ways that I could stagger him to get a parry attack on him faster. And what is actually kind of crazy, especially as you die several times over and you start narrowing in on the very specific strategies that work, I found that my best bet was to sneak in quick, heavy jump attacks. And that was the whole thing. So like anytime, instead of trying to do a charge attack or just that normal heavy attack, I'd be like, jump up in the air real quick and hit the right trigger and do like a slam charge attack. And I found that would stagger him after like 3 or 4 hits. But it also depends on how frequently you get those hits in, because it's actually why I kind of wish that they brought the posture bar from Sekiro over, where you can actually see how close a person is to being staggered.
I kind of like the butt clenching nature of not seeing it.
Yeah, I mean, There's an argument for both. Although I think if they release a mod, that's one I might install and see how it affects my play style. Because I think honestly, if I could see the posture bar, I might like not even be worried about health damage at all. And just be like, I'm just gonna try to break their stance. That's all I'm doing. Because at a certain point in Sekiro, I was rarely trying to do actual damage. I would hit the people with my sword a couple times just to lower that health, because at least in Sekiro, as they have lower health, they take
beautiful
structure
thing.
damage.
Beautiful thing in Sekiro is like with what's Ishin Ashina.
Oh yeah, like the last boss.
Yes, you can control him so well, and then you just basically become into this beautiful dance of cling clang cling clang cling clang. It's so good.
It got to the point that the first phase of him, like Kenichiro, who's also like mid-game bosses, I can almost parry every single one of his attacks. So I've had fights against him where it's just like, oh man, it's like
he's basically done in 10 seconds.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. One thing I wanted to talk about is the summon ashes. One thing I find kind of sad is how good the mimic is. Because I want to start playing around with some other ones, figuring out how they work and because they could be really fun, like not in the sense of making it the game easy, but kind of helping you out a little bit. Like that's one thing I noticed with the jellyfish. I first mostly used the jellyfish, and that one was kind of really fun because you just had something to take the aggro off of you and deal minimal damage and maybe even poison the boss. So that wasn't too much, but when you really were struggling, it was something that we like, okay, that helped. With the mimic, it's kind of like, well, this thing is kind of almost broken.
Now there's two of me.
Yeah, there's two of me, and the AI is not too awful. I mean, one thing I noticed today, I was trying something out with Millennia. I wanted to see if she can get poisoned easily, so I put on poison daggers. I started throwing poison daggers around and noticed my mimic started throwing poison daggers as well, and was like, oh, that's neat.
Did you guys just see that on the screen? The goat got in the way.
Yeah.
That's amazing. One
thing I love about the goats is how they start rolling around. Yeah. When they start running away from me, suddenly they start rolling around like Sonic.
Yeah, no, I think the wildlife is interesting in this game. I think specifically because you can kill them or you can target them. So a lot of the time, I will assume that something like eagles that you come across are enemies, and then I'll try to sneak up on them and then kill them, and then later in the game, I'm like, oh, they're just fauna. Like,
have you found the owls?
They're not at all harmful.
They're owls. They sometimes spawn owls, and they just don't run away and do nothing. They're just there. They hoot, and you're like, oh well, I kind of don't want to kill it.
Yeah, you end up feeling evil when you do. The wolves will attack you though. They're not just harmless animals running around.
And sometimes they drop in like as if they were airdropped.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, one thing we haven't talked about is the story so much, and there isn't that much in regards to a main plot regarding, yes, these are the Elden Lords, you have to go after them, you're going to become one.
Well, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, I was just curious because Dark Souls tends to focus on the fate of the world, the light fading out, and what do you do, that your choices actually do have an impact on the ending. This doesn't seem to be that sort of game. Like they sort of said, yeah, well, that's not that important. We're going to focus on gameplay and exploration and NPCs and that sort of thing.
It follows very much in the line of Dark Souls, where the story is there's a lot of lore that is very interesting, but there's kind of quote unquote no plot for the game. There wasn't either for the Souls game. But also from the interview I keep mentioning, which was a Famitsu interview, they intentionally did it that way because they intended for what you play to be the story. Sort of, you are like kind of the David in the myth of David and Goliath.
Okay.
That kind of way. So you are this quote-unquote hero in this mythological story who fights these gods to fix the world.
But how exactly you fix it is up to...
Yeah, there are different endings.
Well, and I don't think I got the stock one. And I didn't... I made a a point to, at least on my first playthrough, not look up anything about how to get any specific ending or if there's a good ending versus a bad ending, because I didn't want to know. I'm just like, if I know I'm going to be tempted to like try to get the good ending and stuff, and I want to just not know. So
I got to spoil it for you. It's usual for Dark Souls. There's not kind of a quote unquote good ending.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. Although Sekiro, I think, had a pretty objectively good ending. Though.
Yeah.
None of the other Dark Souls games really did. I don't know. I guess the ending of Dark Souls 3, or at least the one I got, was conclusive. And I thought that, like,
there's a canon one. There's a canon one that I really, really like for Dark Souls 3.
Dark Souls 1, though, it's just like, either way, it's like, I don't know, man. Like, you might have just doomed the world no matter which one you picked.
I did it the same way, but that one thing, it is concerning story. There are some quest lines that I think all the quest lines are quite worth it. They are hard. Some of them are really fucking hard to pull off, because you have to find the people, and they don't tell you where they go half of the time. You're like, oh, well, hope I run into that person again.
And that is like, that would be a good spot to kind of branch out and talk about the quest design, because I follow, and I was actually really the reason I picked the ending that I got, because you are given a situation where there's like after you fight the final boss and beat the Elden Beast, you can any ending that you have unlocked, you can kind of select in a way depending on what you do afterwards. So, and I saw on the ground I had summon Ronnie as
I got that
as an option. Too. And I knew that the only reason I had that is because I organically followed her quest line.
I somehow managed to pull it off as well. I don't know how I did it, because it's a bit of a convoluted one, but I absolutely love that quest. I love it.
I found it was convoluted, but I think once you get to the Three Sisters area, there's enough hints that you can really kind of get what's going on. And the only thing I looked up was when they say, like, you need to go to the crater. And I was like, crater? It's like, what crater? It's like after you fight Radon. And I was like, where is that? And then I just looked up the map marker for it, and it was just like outside the Hague Fort, which is a place I've been before and a place that I'd done a quest. And then I warp over there and I was like, oh, there's a massive hole in the world now. And I don't know that I ever would have gone to that area again. So that's, I guess, the most that you could say I cheated on that quest line. But for the most part, after that, it was organic, and I just started exploring the underworld on my own.
I knew about the hole. I got spoiled on that. But I didn't know that it was involved in the quest line. And then suddenly I was down there sitting at the site of grace, and I just was, so you don't really pay attention if there's a new option. But suddenly I was like, wait, hold a minute. Sat down again, I was like, talk to Rani. I was like, wait, what? Yeah. And that made me really happy, because I love these conversations you can have with her.
Yeah, and the reason I was able to see it at the ending, I think the only reason, is because it's the only summon sign in the entire game that was blue.
Yep.
So like afterwards, I'm like, oh, what's this blue summon sign? I looked at it and it's like summon Ronnie, and I was like, I never would have got this ending if I didn't finish that quest line. Did it? So that's the one I'm picking. It's the only one I've seen so far, so I don't even know what happens in the other ones. And I honestly, sorry. I was just going to say, I honestly couldn't even tell you what exactly happened. Ronnie, I think, kind of like, I don't know, made me one of the stars, I guess, like literal stars.
Well, she basically is the new god of the new age, and you are her, consort, her husband.
Yeah.
In that new age.
Yeah, she kind of like lets you hold her hand. She's got like 4 arms too, like Goro. You don't really even notice before that. I was like, oh
yeah,
man.
Well, first time I saw her giving you the bell, I was like, wait, hold on a minute. She has 4 hands.
Yeah, I think I didn't catch that the first time.
But also,
the ending,
one thing
like, oh, whoa, it's creepy. Maybe this is a bad ending. I don't know. I liked Ronnie though. She's cute.
Yeah, I like her a lot, especially the design with basically having a spirit half next to her normal face. Kind of looks fascinating. But one thing I want to say is like the cave where you put the ring on her. I think it's corpse. Well, where you get the dark moon, the moonlight greatsword.
Yeah, you got to say spoilers for this one. I actually got yelled at by people in my comment section the other day.
Sorry,
having it. No, I got yelled at by people in my comment section
heavy spoilers. The moonlight greatsword is in the game.
I had a close up of her face as my thumbnail, a close up, and people were like, "Oh my god, that's such a spoiler!" And I'm like, "What? was like, what can you
No,
glean? That's a close up of
anyways-
his face. That's character art, man. Like,
this cave where you do that step. You know how there's up
Yeah.
is the cathedral where you go down, and then you basically jump out at the other end. My first time being there, I didn't notice the hole in the floor in the cathedral. I was looking around the island, then I suddenly saw a hole in the rock wall
In the ground,
cliff side. No, the cliff side. You know where you jump out at the other end.
oh yeah, and you're like, oh, all of a sudden.
And I was
back
like,
up
how
here
do you
again.
get there? And then I just basically jumped off the cliff with the horse and double jumped in, and
And then
got
went
to the final step
accidentally?
of the quest that way.
That's amazing.
So it was like, then later when finishing exploring that island, I was like, oh, there was a hole in the ground. I could have gone down there.
Man, that's
So
pretty
yeah,
funny.
even that way, I was just suddenly got there and saw what you see in the cave, and I was like, holy shit!
I think though it's kind of a good place to loop back around to just the concept of the quest design in this game is it kind of feels like this world exists despite your presence in it. Like it
doesn't
does
give
feel
a
like
shit about you.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you are clearly the hero, and like you're special because you're the player of the game. But the story and like the actual narrative doesn't revolve around your character. It's not
Yeah.
like you're I don't know, like Solid
base-
Snake or Nathan Drake or something where like everything's kind of revolving around your involvement in it. It's just like there's things going on. There's entire characters that you might not ever meet unless you go looking for them. And you can affect their stories, but their stories are kind of happening anyways. And I think that that's the real beauty of it being very hands off as far as how much it guides you. Like it's just explore this world, make your own adventure. Some playthroughs you might encounter some characters. If you go to other places, you'll encounter others on other playthroughs. But it's not just all going to be like it's not a checklist. And yeah, I saw that the gargoyle teabagging him.
It's one thing I respect a lot about From Software. They even with some like areas you can miss huge areas, like really big areas are optional. In a lot of games, they make they put a lot of time into everything so that you can get everything. But here they even put like maybe even months of development into things and expect you to not find it.
Yep.
Because they're like, well, you know, we just put it there, and I think that makes discovering stuff way cooler. I think for some quests, they could have at least had the characters say, oh, I'm going this direction now. But
yeah, I mean, that's true. There's always situations in which it could be a little bit more guided and still be pretty effective. But I sort of, that's why I actually think that I've always said that like you probably shouldn't look things up, like go to the IGN wiki walkthrough or whatever and like go step by step trying to treat it like it's a Ubisoft game. But I've always said that my exception to that rule is if you're talking to other people playing the game, like your friends and stuff, and they tell you about things.
They're like, holy shit, I've discovered this thing. And you're like, what? That's so cool.
Like,
I need to check that out.
Like, I think actually it was one of the bosses, man. Elmer of the Briar. So I would have beaten the game without fighting that person at all. But I was watching Heel vs. Babyface I don't know if you guys know him. He's on the show my wife produces. And he was streaming and he was fighting this boss in this area that I had never seen. And I was just like, hey man, I was like, where is this? And he's like, well, I don't know. Like, is it a spoiler if I show you my map? I'm like, no. Like I'm talking to you. I'm interacting with the community. Show me where it is on the map. He opened the map and just saw the point. I'm like, okay, cool. That's enough for me. I'm just going to go explore that tomorrow. And the next day I booted up the game with the intention of going directly there. And I got lost. I ended up doing so many things along the way. It was just like, because it's like north. I'm going to this part in the north of the map, and that's my goal for the day. And you just go in that direction, but then don't be afraid to be distracted. Like,
you do 10, 20 different things before you reach it.
Yeah, if you see another castle that you haven't explored, be like, let's check out this.
I just defeated this boss of this really huge area. Oh wait, I wanted to go way a different place. Oh god damn it.
Or there's an Evergel there, which means that's a little contained arena with a boss that I can fight.
I was just reminded of it because you mentioned Elmer. The same area you find the prosthesis, the arm. the Millicent questline. So I was like, I managed to figure out how to save her from rot. Then she was just like
really?
standing there, and she was like, "Oh, if only I had an arm again." And I was like, Then, per chance, I was over there in their castle, and I found the prosthesis, and I was like, "Holy crap! I need to give that to her."
That's amazing. I just
walked
learned
back. I was like, "Oh, you have an arm now!" Just like was so happy. If I had a quest marker telling me, "Oh, you get the arm over,"
yeah, I didn't know that until just now. So I did find the prosthesis, but I did not save her.
Okay. No, the thing is, like, if I had a quest marker telling me where the arm is, I would never have been this fucking happy to find the arm. Because I was just like, suddenly I was there, like, in the back of my head, I almost have forgotten about Millicent. Then I find the arm, was like, oh crap, I can use that for that quest line. And I really like that, how kind of organic it feels. So it's just, the world exists, and you just like, oh well, I'm part of it. I mean, I'm the way I like to put it is almost like a wrestling fight going on, and you're just in the audience watching it, and suddenly you just jump in and just deliver the final blow and become the king. It's kind of that way.
Hulk Hogan hands you a chair and says, "Get him. Get him, bro."
Yeah, kind of like that. And I really enjoy that design.
But yeah, I don't know. Sorry, Smud. We've been kind of dorking out over our quest features. Feel free to chime in there.
Yeah, no, I've been watching the videos as well. So these are all, I guess, they're errors or funny compilations. So there's lots to talk about this game. It seems to be it's like yours to discover, to just whatever you make of it.
Yeah.
There's so much to go and explore and find out, and a new weapon or a new ability that you discover. So I think that opens up the game, and the game seems to be focused on gameplay anyway. They always have been, and there's no difficulty. It's just, this is the game. This is all there is. You can't tweak it. You can't change it. You can, I don't know, change off the graphics quality, of course, but there's no.
You have in-world methods to make it easier or harder.
Yeah, it's brutal. It's designed that way. It's open world. You're allowed to go wherever you want, and that's the appeal. And if you don't like that, that's totally cool. There's plenty of other games. Like my focus, like if you look at Squaresoft Enix the past few months, they've been coming out with a lot of tactical games recently. I think Triangle Strategy just came out.
Yeah, they just announced 2 more. Like,
you're right.
Is the Valkyrie game? No, that one's not. But I think it's like a new IP that it kind of looks like Fire Emblem. Well, that they just announced that that's Sony's state of play.
Well, yeah, they're doing the Stranger in Paradise, which is a prequel to the original Final Fantasy, and it's a Souls-style game.
Yeah, it's by the Neo developers. It's interesting. It's weird for sure, but it plays a lot like Neo, but with a job system, so you can
it's developed by the guys behind Neo.
Yeah, and there's no inventory sorting, and they hit like 500 items and all this crap, and everyone's comparing it to Elden Ring, and it's like, yeah, it doesn't even come close. It's
very, very different, at least from what I played of it. I mean, I think the final version comes out. Is it today? It might be, actually.
I don't know.
I know the reviews are out. So
well, today for you, it might be something different to me. It might be a different day already.
Yeah, I think Smub Boy's like half an hour south of me, so we're in the same spot.
Right, same time zone at least.
Well, I'm a couple hours ahead.
Yeah. So but there's all these games coming out, and I still think that Elden Ring is going to take the game of the year just because of all the people playing it, the highest rating on OpenCritic, the number of content, like the media just going nuts on YouTube. Like everywhere you go on YouTube for gaming, you have someone doing some new thing or exploring some thing. And this is like the 13th compilation video, I think, and that's just been made in the past day. So it's just hugely popular. I'm just waiting to see what is next, because this may not be the style of game for everyone, but eventually it's going to inspire the action-adventure, platforming, open-world genre as a whole. It's not just going to be a flash in the pan. So
one thing I just find so sad is that a lot of people who will be inspired by it will not get why people like it so much. Yeah. So they will just copy aspects of it and will never kind of, how should I say that, really understand what is so special about it. It's the whole package about so it's similar to Dark Souls. A lot of games have copied Dark Souls style, but then also implemented a lot of the Ubisoft handholdy style, and it just doesn't mesh that well. Like with the Assassin's Creed games, they clearly have the combat clearly is quite inspired by Dark Souls, but they just don't really understand what's so cool about the combat.
And I think it's interesting how much at a conceptual level this game has in common with Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, because for the last 5 years, every time an open world game comes out where there's like a hang glider or something like that, or you have free climbing, the first thing every kind of like, I don't know, like games journalist type person will be like, oh my God, this element seems very inspired by Breath of the Wild. And I think that like, it's like, okay, yeah, you could make that argument, but just the way that if a game's slightly difficult for the last 10 years, people being like, oh, this game's like the Dark Souls of Pokemon games or like whatever it ends up being. Whereas this, like, what's actually kind of funny, it makes it almost hard to talk about this game, is that it's really impossible to not compare this game to Dark Souls, clearly, because I mean, effectively, this is Dark
It is
Souls.
supposed to be an evolution of
it's very much Dark Souls 4. Like, it's not called Dark Souls 4, but it is. Like,
I would say it is, but with asterisks added to that, because I think there are some significant changes to it.
Well, and I think that the changes that were made to it make it different enough that I think turning it into a new IP and not just saying like, oh yeah, this new Dark Souls games was a good idea. But I just don't want to get too far off track. But the Breath of the Wild thing is much more simple than a lot of people are giving it credit for, because they're like, oh well, it's just you can kind of explore in any direction, and it's like, no, the thing that makes it different, because you can explore in any direction in a Ubisoft game, but the real key difference is a Ubisoft Assassin's Creed game or a Far Cry game, like pick the Ubisoft game, it's probably, if it's open world, it likely follows this formula, is a map full of stuff for the player to do. Whereas both Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring have the one thing in common, is that they invert that. And it's an empty map that the player needs to fill with their own things.
I wouldn't quite say it like that. I would say that in Ubisoft, it's a map filled with stuff, and you know where everything is because everything is marked from the beginning. So, oh look, there's something interesting.
Whoa, what was that?
But here's just there's quite a bit of
the end of the Radon fight. Yeah,
there's a lot of stuff in the map, but you will have to find it.
Well, yeah, and that's kind of what I mean by, and I don't mean the world is empty. I mean the literal map, like the map screen.
Oh, okay.
The map screen is empty in both Breath of the Wild and in Elden Ring, and the player needs to fill the map by discovering things on their own, by putting their own markings on the map, by remembering certain locations, by trying to figure out, okay, I know that these holes in the map, like these dark spots, those are all mines. So it's not like I know the mine icon and I hover over it and it's like unexplored mine, still a boss creature in here. There will be a level 5 weapon when you hover over it. It doesn't say anything. It's just a spot on a map. But you start to learn the world and you're like, okay, this seems like the area where there might be a mine. That looks like a mine thing. I want to upgrade my sword more. I can't buy any of the smithing stones that are of the level I need. So maybe if I go explore this mine, I'll find one of the smithing bells and that'll let me do that. But I might not. Either way, I'll probably find something. I'm going to go check it out. Whereas in a Ubisoft game, like I said, you'd hover over it and it would just tell you exactly what you can find in there. And the only thing that would be stopping you from going to it, it's like, oh, but this says level 57 dungeon and I'm level 54, so...
Yeah, well, in Elden Ring, you go into the dungeon and you're suddenly like, oh, I do no damage to these enemies, and I'm dead.
But I mean, sometimes you can go in... Right. If you go into one of those what should be hopeless situations and you get that glimmer of I can do this, like that little
and
like
pull through,
I'm doing just enough damage to this boss that I think it's possible. Because for me, that honestly was my first encounter with Margit. I probably did Stormvale Castle before I should have. I was level 17, and when I fought Margit for the first time, I had one of those, because every so often this will happen, where in all the Souls games and Sekiro for that matter, where the first time you fight a boss, you do way better than you do for the next 20 attempts, and you don't understand how it happened. Like, it's just, that beginner's luck where it's just like I was, for some reason, feeling those moves, and I was able to get those dodge timings, and now I'm overthinking it, so I've got to, like, start from scratch and really relearn it. I had one of those against Market, where it's like I got him down to, say, probably not super like maybe 60% health. So I did like 40% damage. But if I've done 40% damage on an enemy on my first attempt, all I can think is, yeah, I can beat this guy. And then I basically spent like probably a solid 4 hours just fighting Margit over and over again. And I was like, no, I'm doing this. I'm killing Margit before I move on. And a big part of me was saying, hey, I should turn around and just go level up. But I'm like, no, I don't know. I think
that's the beauty of these games. You can make up with skill. You can make up the gap with skill.
Exactly. And the fact that I was able to do it, and I mean, the fight's on my channel if anyone wants to see it, it gives you that kind of like, oh man, yeah, like this is good. But then there's other fights where I'm just like, yeah, no, I'm not up for this. I'm gonna go get stronger and then come back for it. And I really love that you've got that freedom. It's not just you get to certain enemies and there's a red skull above where the character's level number would be, and you're doing like 1 HP damage, like chip damage on them, and they're one-shotting you. Like those are the things that happen in an RPG where it's like, well, clearly I'm not supposed to be here and I can't be here, so I might as well.
The way I like to phrase it is it's the ultimate game way of show, don't tell.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just like, well, we don't tell you that that it's too early for you. We just show you in the way that the bosses are super strong, and you're pretty much there. But you could still do it. You could.
It's like you might be good enough to do it, and like that's evidenced by. I mean, we just started this stream with watching the guy who just beat the entire game in half an hour, and it makes me want to cry.
I mean, I'm watching a streamer who's doing it all level 1.
No joke, I spent probably 5 times as much time as that guy just beat the entire game just fighting Radagon last night.
Yeah, same. Well, not last night, but one thing I want to say, one thing I actually find a lot of people seem to me, at least, well, not people here on the chat, I mean, just have seen people online misunderstand where they complain about the stuff you get from dungeons. Everything is just spells, ashes, or weapons they can't use. And I'm like, the thing I like about that is just it is all something that is quote unquote useful. It might not be useful to you right now or to your character right now, but for a certain character, for a certain player, this is a super useful spell or item. So everything you find can potentially be useful, maybe not for you right now, but then suddenly you come into a dungeon and then find a weapon. You were like, this weapon seems utterly ridiculous. Is it any good? And then you start using it. It's like, oh, well, that's a really fun weapon. And I find that really appreciate that way more than the Ubisoft comparison. Finding a weapon, you're like, well, the stats are different to the stats I have right now, but it's the exact same as before.
All the numbers have gone up, yeah. my M16 is now a gold M16 that does plus 5 damage.
I really like in Elden Ring is, have you found the finger? There's a weapon.
Found the finger?
No, found the finger. There's a weapon that's literally a huge ass finger. The weapon art is that you can make the finger even bigger and flick the enemies.
Oh my god.
That is so fucking fun.
It's the most From Software thing I've ever heard in my life.
It is fantastic, but also it does decent damage, so you're like, well, it is usable.
Someone's going to make a hilarious video of a speed run using that. But I think one thing that's worth noting, especially on the point of like, well, this item is useless to me. Once you defeat the second demigod, at any point in the game, you can just go respec your character. So, I mean, realistically, even I guess not right now because I started New Game Plus, but at any time after I beat Renala, I could just go talk to her and then be like, okay, I'm decided that my tanky like guts from Berserk build where I have a massive greatsword is now going to be a healer who does some enchantments, and that's it. I'm just going to be a full-blown magic user, and all I really need is a larval tear, which is an item that you can get from a few enemies a little bit later in the game, and the time to go over there and decision to respec. You can't respec your base stats, so if you picked I don't know, say like a bandit, which is my starting class, I will always have the base bandit stats that I can't switch, but every single attribute point that I've added, I can remove from strength and then dump into intelligence or faith or mind or arcane, which honestly, I'm not even sure what arcane does.
It does some scaling for some weapons, some spells. It affects your item discovery, so the more arcane you have, the more likely enemies drop items, also rare drops.
So it's luck.
Yeah,
Like,
well, it does a bit.
Stat,
I think it does a bit more than just luck. But if in the menus, if you are in the menus, you can. I forgot which button it is. You can click. It's on the bottom of the screen written which button you can click, and then shows you the infos, and you can then hover over the stats and show what they do in detail. Like that's how you find out that dexterity actually influences spellcasting time, which a lot of people don't know.
I love all these guys with no armor just coming in with a club or a bastard sword and just charging.
Yes, the wretch build. Yeah, usually SL1 or Soul level 1, or I guess it's not Soul level in this one. Rune level 1, RL1.
I will always say so.
Yeah, I know. SL1 is just what I default to saying in a Souls game. It's usually a big club that they go with, because you can turn those into just massive glass cannons if you have enough speed, like a light equip load.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like this game is going to get some updates, hopefully some DLC. I don't know if that's a thing from Software.
They have mentioned that they want to support the game for a while.
Every From Software game except for Sekiro has gotten
at least one DLC.
Yeah, at least one DLC.
And they were pretty decently sized.
That's the thing. And the other thing is, it's almost unanimous that the best bosses of Dark Souls 1, 2, 3, and Bloodborne all were DLC bosses.
Yeah.
And I think that, honestly, my favorites, and Dark Souls 2 I didn't really like, so I don't even know if is Fume Knight, is he a DLC? I think he is.
Yeah, he is.
That was all right. I think is Mirror Knight DLC?
No, that's in the base game.
Okay, I think Mirror Knight was probably my favorite boss in Dark Souls.
I really like the mechanic that he can summon a player into.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I thought that was a pretty good fight. But Artorias is my favorite boss in the original game, and he's DLC. Slave Knight Gale in Dark Souls 3, he's DLC.
Oh, that's such a good fucking fight.
Yeah, Ludwig the Accursed in Bloodborne, DLC, and honestly, probably Lady Maria after that, and she's DLC. So I mean, like, at a certain point, it's if they never make any DLC for Bloodborne, it still has some incredible bosses, but it almost makes me wonder what they're gonna do.
Yeah, I'm interested in that too. The one thing I really cannot overstate is the similarity in Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring. It really is is the mentality of, well, we don't care if you miss it.
Yeah,
it's just like, we created this world, you can explore it how you want to, but if you miss this thing, we don't care.
Yeah, minimalist structure, and not that the structure is minimalist, but that
there are some fun weapons, yes.
Yeah, why not just fight with an anchor? But yeah, but I think that, like, when you compare it to, I mean, I guess Horizon's kind of was the big competitor for both of them. Funny enough, that Zero Dawn came out right before Breath of the Wild, and Forbidden West.
They are salty.
And that's a whole other bag of worms. But I think that the big design concept difference is, compared to either Breath of the Wild or Elden Ring, Horizon is a very designed game. There's a lot of game design there, whereas Elden Ring and Breath of the Wild both are just like, hey, how about we just don't do as much? And
I honestly think Horizon
you're just being lazy. It's like, well, no, but I mean, sometimes not doing as much and not structuring as much lets the player be like, okay, well, let me just figure this out then, because I don't have a roadmap, you know?
Yeah, I think the Horizon is in parts a bit over-designed. And also one thing I noticed in Horizon when I played it when it came out for a bit, and then Elden Ring came out, and I basically forgot it existed.
I kind of decided to just wait for the PC version of Forbidden West, just because I like playing Zero Dawn with a mouse and keyboard a lot more than with a controller. Well, and I knew that Elden Ring was coming out the next week, so I'm just like,
I don't have a gaming PC, so.
Ah, fair enough.
Well, I also don't like playing on PC because I have certain issues with OCDs, which makes me not able to relax when playing on PC. So.
Oh, I mean, I have the PC I played all of Elden Ring on, or at least the vast majority of, is the one that I have in my bedroom, and it's just hooked up to a TV. So I just, I lie down on bed. Play with my puppies
I just get nervous if I have too many settings because I then keep checking settings.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
So that's the thing I have. I mean, sometimes even with my TV, I just like, or even if Elden Ring on a console, I'm playing on the Series X, I just kept checking the brightness for like half an hour because I just have this mental tick. And that's why when on PC, there's just way too many settings to keep worrying about that I'm like, I don't want to.
I think that I will usually have a target frame rate in mind for a game that I'm playing. So usually for first-person shooters, I try to shoot for 100 frames a second. And if it's anything that I'm playing upstairs, because that TV is only 60 hertz, I always just try to do whatever I need to do to lock it at 60. Elden Ring was a little on the shaky side. There is a fix that I did in the NVIDIA settings that helped quite a bit. But even still, the performance could use some work. But
even...
Almost 100% of my problems with this game are technical in nature.
Yeah, there are some minor things that I think, but also most of it is technical for me, and some stuff where I think my score will be pretty high in the review, but there are some minus points because I think, while I love it, it's just I can't say it's the best way to do it, quote unquote, objectively. You know what I mean?
That's a good question because I want to say this has gotten so high reviews. What's the things that don't work for the game? Like, what are the negative aspects? People talk about frame rate dropping, but I've never heard of any bugs breaking the game or hard crashes. Like, nothing like that has ever been mentioned.
There are some instances of crashes. With some PC, it happens that like every 7 hours or so, the game gets stuck in the loading screen and you have to reset.
Yeah, that's happened to me.
There are some issues like that. I think...
Look at this guy.
Speaking of which...
While we're talking about this, yes. There are some frame issues, especially if you are between loading scenes of loading
areas
where you kind of run back and forth. It can happen that it gets a bit choppy. On my Series X, it has been running beautifully with some frame drops here and there, but never within a boss. I know with some people that the game ran perfectly except for Millennia, where the game just started chucking.
Oh, really? I didn't have any problems in her fight. There were some times where I was fighting dragons on horseback that I'd be kicking into like the high 40s of frames, and I'm not a fan of that happening. At the same time, it was never unplayable because it was usually in situations where the dragon is flying in the air and breathing fire and I'm running in a straight line with my horse. So it's not a moment where I need to do like pinpoint dodge timing. So I wouldn't say it doesn't bother me, but it didn't get me killed. So it's like,
there's just one streamer I know where the game basically ran perfectly, and when he got to Millennia, the game started periodically, just whenever she started her flurry attack, the game just stopped.
That is not the fight
up and it's like, well,
about your performance.
But no, there's also some things I would say with the AI in some areas. It's still the same AI. It's just in the open world can, in very seldom instances, break it a little bit. So they're just standing around somewhere, and you're like, well, why is that guy just standing there? But it's extremely rare to see it, to notice it. And also with like fights, as you see on the screens, sometimes dragons have a bit of an issue with the geography. Sometimes. I mean, I just yesterday had it happen that the plague, the Scarlet Drop Dragon in Kaled, just went up on the geography and then just was quote unquote on a stump of a tree, but it looked like he was floating midair and just basically none of his attacks could hit me anymore. And I was like, that's kinda could be a bit better. And there are also some instances where they kind of correct it, but the way they correct it is a bit weird, like with some dragon fights, if they get stuck in certain areas or get too far away from the designated areas, they kind of poof away and then appear again. However, the health doesn't reset, so there are some technical stuff like that. And one thing I would also say is that one minor critique point I have is while I love how the story is told and I love the story myself, I think for a lot of people it will be quite confusing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I mean, I think that it's difficult for me to really critique the story all that much because this playthrough I was less invested with especially the overarching story than I was a couple of the side quests like Radon and oh god.
Sorry?
I realize I lost my I lost my push to talk on that one. Sorry about that. But yeah, no, there was a few of the side stories that I got more invested in, but for the most part, I was playing this game for the gameplay and the experience on this playthrough, and I think that on subsequent playthroughs I might pay more attention to the lore. But
I'm just a big lore nerd when it comes to this stuff, so I always go like, oh, that's cool, and then just the new weapon is like, oh, what's written there?
Yeah, and I found that I would often be looking at the item descriptions to try to find my next crumb to follow for a quest. To be like, hey, is there anything here that'll be like, oh, wait, I remember someone mentioning something about this. Maybe I should go back to that town.
Yeah. The one thing I found very funny is that I have seen people complain about certain concept not being given, and I was like, well, that's literally told to you in the first cutscene.
Oh yeah.
There's so much info in the opening cutscene, and a lot of people seem not to listen to it. Then again, I've also seen a lot of people who weren't kind of in the mindset of old Souls game, where the opening cutscene usually introduces the bosses you will fight. In this game, it's slightly different. They show hints of the bosses, but also introduce you to characters you will meet that are not quote unquote enemies.
Or not main bosses. Like some of the people in the opening cinematic are like, oh, this is just a person you fight who's guarding one of the later bosses. And
yeah.
So I would say that the criticisms you have are negative rather are specific to some glitches, some technical elements, frame rates, and story not being as attractive to everyone. Or the setting, rather.
Yeah. I think you could probably levy some of the same criticisms you could against pretty much any of the Dark Souls games, where some of the hitboxes are a little wonky. There's not really a consistent amount of distance in which you can fall and survive. Sometimes you can get really large falls and just take a bit of stamina damage. Sometimes you'll take no damage, and then it's like you fall 10 feet sometimes and you just die, and it's like, wait, what?
Yeah, sometimes the hitboxes seem to be accurate to the fucking atom, and other times it's just like, well, what the fuck? That was 2 meters away from me.
Yeah, grabs are still a problem. Anytime a boss has a grab,
Millennia.
Try to get further away than
New Game Plus, it was a one-shot. The grab was a one-shot, New Game Plus.
Oh my god, that sucks. Wait, you've already gotten a Millennia on New Game Plus? Jesus.
Yes.
Speaking of which, actually, I just shared in the Discord my fight against Melania that I just made live on my channel. So if you guys, Melania, sorry, yeah, I keep on wanting to call her Melania Trump, but because it sounds pretty similar in the way it's spelt. But yeah, if you guys want to see how cheap I got for that fight, it's pretty bad. I'm not very proud of it.
I figured out the way how you can fucking hit her for insane amounts of damage is this dual wield twin blades. Jesus.
Oh, really? Yeah, I didn't try that. Yeah, you'll see what I do. So I immediately summon my Mimic Veil. He's kind of getting going. I just right out the gate with the Hoarfrost Stomp, because I found that the really interesting thing about using that attack on her is that she would often dodge into it. So like you could kind of shoot it in a place where she's going to be, and she'd move into it, and the damage is kind of delayed because if she goes across the icicles in the ground.
Oh, you're using the greatsword.
Yeah. I went full out Guts from Berserk with this build, except I used a shield, which was new for me actually. I hadn't really used shields in the other Souls games except like using a buckler to parry.
Oh, for me, it's always the case that I use the shield heavily, and then the more I play, the less shield I use.
Yeah, so I went in the opposite direction. I like even from the get go. I just here I kind of stun lock her against the wall, and this really helped. Getting her back into a corner is advantageous.
But I have one thing I would like to mention is one also we had it from critique points. One thing I would say is that there are certain textures and certain technical things which are not, up to speed, and you could say a bit muddy, but you never notice it because the art design is just that fucking good.
Yeah. The art design, lighting, there's a lot of elements that make it a very aesthetically pleasing game. When fundamentally, like, people are like, oh, like you'll see people that hate on the game be like, oh, it looks like a PS3 game. It's like, yeah, I mean, there's some truth to that. It really doesn't look all that much different from Demon Souls or the original Dark Souls when you think about it. It's just,
it definitely has gotten an upgrade. I would say it's just that there are certain. It has certain outdatedness to it, but you never really notice it unless you actively look for it.
It's sort of in the way like Call of Duty Infinite Warfare looks like Modern Warfare 1. Like, I mean, there's definitely a lot more tech and budget behind Infinite Warfare, but you can see the DNA there. It's like,
I know
they're very much based on the same technology, and I think that you could say that about Elden Ring, but the difference, I think, especially like, I mean, it's not really fair to compare Call of Duty to the From Software games, but is the art direction is so good and everything looks so incredible from an artistic standpoint.
Stunningly beautiful.
Yeah, like I don't need to see peach fuzz on Millennia's stomach in order to be like, oh, that looks amazing. But I just say peach fuzz because that was the thing people were flipping out about Aloy. They're like, she has peach fuzz on her cheeks. It's the best looking game ever. I'd be like, man, I'm running around fighting robot dinosaurs. Like, yeah, I don't care.
No,
granted, Horizon, to be fair though, Horizon does have pretty good art direction. I don't want to seem like I'm dumping on it.
Yes, it has. I will ultimately always prefer the FromSoft style because I just love this gritty, dark fantasy that sometimes is very grim dark. Like, very.
Oh, yeah. Especially Bloodborne. Bloodborne is like,
yeah,
crazy.
But I mean, have you looked at the model of Godric? You look at his feet, and you're like, "What the fuck is going on there?"
Godric's super fucked up.
But also, one thing I want to mention, also in terms of critique, there are sometimes shadows that fuck up, like in the trees, that look really strange. But once again, it's a thing you never really notice unless you look for it. And another thing is one thing. It's not really a critique. It's more something that I find really funny. Is when there's wind, the tree actually sway and it looks very cool, very atmospheric. And then there are some trees where the leaves just kind of look like they're dancing, like hopping up and down instead of swaying in the wind, and it just looks kind of funny.
So yes, I died when I beat her.
Yeah, I was like, what's going on? Oh, okay.
The Scarlet Rot got me, man. she had a damage over time spell, but I got her. I got the achievement. She's dead. It's fine, and I.
Oh, did you hear what Miyazaki said when asked, why are there so many poison swamps in your games? His answer was, "Well, I just can't help myself."
Yes, that's the best. And yeah, there is always a poison swamp at least one point.
This area you can find a poison swamp.
Yeah, in this game there's like 3 or 4.
No, there are more than 3 or 4. There are quite a few.
There's 3 or 4 that I found.
There's a huge lake of rot.
Yeah, I definitely found that one. That was one of the ones I counted. And
you need to find it to get to finish Rani's questline.
That's probably... Oh, yes. That is actually where I did find it. And even to get to Millennia, you have to cross a big scarlet rot pool.
Oh, yeah, there's another one, right.
All right, guys. Well, it sounds like you are enamored by the game.
Oh, boy, yes.
I would imagine you recommend it to anyone who likes action-adventure or RPG, gothic, fantasy, dark fantasy stories, or games in general.
I would say so, and I think that I could safely recommend it to anyone who doesn't mind a game which takes patience to learn. I won't say that a game for people that like super difficult or super challenging games, because I honestly think these games are super hard. That element of them is almost a bit overblown. It's more that like, no, there's things about this game that you're going to need to learn. You are not going to be able to run up to the enemy and tap X to win. Like that's kind of the big thing. It's you're actually going to have to be like, wait, hold on. Why did I die? What killed me? Okay, it's this move, this attack from this character. What can I do to not be killed by that next time? And then you're going to die 20 more times, but then you're going to beat that boss. As long as you're
these
learning
20 times you figure it out.
Yeah, and then like you beat it and it's like, oh man, that feels awesome. I can't believe I actually conquered that. It seemed impossible when I first fought it.
The best thing I love about that is I had that with Dark Souls 3. I played it so much that I got to a point I could go to any boss and just absolutely annihilate them without much problem. You just start feeling like a demigod yourself because you just like, you had such a hard time to begin with, and then you were like, come in, half a minute, boss is dead.
To this day, I have not beaten Dark Eater Midir.
I have.
Yeah, no, it's that I was like, no.
Oh, man,
my build in DS3 was like a thief with a bandit dagger. I was like, yeah, it's not taking down that dragon.
I fought the Nameless King so many times in co-op that I could well, not. I haven't played it in a while, so I probably would not be able to do it, but I could do it no hit.
Oh my god.
I just knew it inside out. I knew his timing perfectly. But concerning Elden Ring, I would say it's similar to other Souls games or games by From Software. I recommend it to people who like to put in time into a game, who like to put in effort and work into a game, but the game gives back. So it takes effort from you to get the game, to get through the game, to learn the secrets, learn the story, learn the gameplay. But once you do, it's incredibly satisfying experience.
Yeah, I think there's a reason why a lot of people don't think that they have what it takes to get through one of the From Software games, and then once they do decide, I'm gonna stick with this one, and I'm gonna see it through to the end. And yeah, and then I find almost everyone, when they bite the bullet and decide, okay, this one I'm actually gonna finish, they get to the end, and then that ends up on their best games of all time list, almost universally. It's been very few people I've ever talked to who have ever said to me, I never thought I'd get through one of those Dark Souls games, but I finally picked up Bloodborne and I played it, and I don't know, 3 out of 10. Like, I've never heard anyone say that.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes you think, it's like, well, maybe if you think, I don't have the time to play a game like that, or I don't play, my favorite is, I don't play games to be frustrated. It's like, well, I've always said that, like, death in this game isn't necessarily frustrating, though. It's only frustrating if you're looking at it like, I don't know, dying in almost any other video game, where it's just
half of the time I laughed my ass off when I die. Because it's like, that was idiotic of me.
And you kind of think, okay, I understand what I did there this time. I'm going to start like actually crafting a better strategy, or going about this a different way, or using a different weapon or a different skill. And there's always a way around a problem. I mean, even me, like, I thought the only fight in this game that I thought was absolute bullshit was the Godskin duo. But I had that Hoarfrost stomp in my back pocket, and then it turned them into kind of a joke. So it's like, well, ultimately, it was my self-imposed difficulty. Like, my self-imposed restriction is what was creating that difficulty. I was like, I just don't want to use my weapon arts. I want to beat them with my sword.
One thing I just would like to mention, because of Hoarfrost Stomp, I got reminded of that. I love how base heavy the Stomp of Horalu gets. If you know which boss I mean.
Oh, yeah.
Godfrey, just boom. The entire fucking arena shakes, and you're like, oh, crap.
When he shouts warrior, though, that is probably like one of the worst line deliveries in the entire franchise.
I love it.
I'm Horalu, warrior! I was like, oh my god, that's silly.
I love it so much. It reminds me almost how fun it's a gimmick fight, but it's so fun, right, Kurt? Have you fought that guy?
Oh, yeah, Rykard the Big Snake.
Have you died to him in the second phase?
Yeah, repeatedly.
I love the voice delivery. We're gonna control the gods from below.
Yeah, that was pretty messed up.
Oh, when you get his weapon, his weapon has loads of arms on it, tiny arms. They actually wriggle around and move when you have the weapon yourself. Kind of creepy.
Yeah, there is also an Iron Throne sword, too.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. Well, that was pretty cool for you guys to be dishing out all that wonderful story and concepts of Elden Ring, which I'm sure I will eventually get around to playing. My brain has to empty from the previous game I just passed, And
Which game was that?
Pathfinder: Wrath of the Righteous. I have.
I heard that's really good.
I just passed the apotheosis ending where you pretty much become a god, and the way that team made that possible ending was it's not like there's no possible way playing the game normally you'd figure this out. It's like a mystery of someone you don't know, of a murder. Like, say, imagine a murder mystery where you don't know who the body is, you don't know who the murderer is, you don't know what happened, and somehow all these random, like, it's a 40-step process throughout the entire 5-act game, and you have no idea what you're doing. Like, with the ending of Mass Effect 3, you have a goal in mind to stop the Reapers, and every 50,000 years, everyone's making a weapon for that. They don't know what it does, they don't know how it works, but they have a goal. In this, it's like building a thing, but you don't know what it's for. You don't know why you're building it. You don't know what's...
Sounds amazing.
Like, it's
not so
obscure.
bad if you get to the end of that project and it's like, oh shit, I'm a god now.
Yeah, suddenly you're like, that's what happens right at the end. But you have to have followed all like there's star charts. You have to know the exact date because there's a calendar system. You have to advance the story, advance the game on the world map. So it's like, what am I doing? Like, how would you possibly figure this out? And the only way it was figured out was the people who, hardcore players, data mined the scripting system and saw the triggers. And they counted them all.
Okay, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And CRPG writers are out of their goddamn minds sometimes.
Yeah, this is like the ultimate. If I was a dungeon master and I made a video game, what would I do? I have a secret super duper ending that if you advance the calendar by a year and a half, and then at this specific day, you have to have this item, and then you talk to this boss, and it's like, it took me about a month or two to get through it. So, yeah.
That reminds me, actually, there's something like that in Elden Ring. I've heard tell of data miners finding a lot of triggers and stuff like that to specific things that could hint at a super secret ending, but they haven't figured out quite everything.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, this one was it's obscure as hell. It makes no sense. It only makes sense right at the end because that's when the dialogue comes in. Where you're arguing with, like, you just defeated the last boss and you're arguing with her what to do with her, and then it's like, wait, I could save you. It's like, yeah, but why? And yeah, but why? And then you have like this 10-step conversation tree of like, well, I found this. It's like, yeah, and I found this. It's like, what is that? Like, what are you talking about? It goes on and on until it's like,
do you have to get every step right in the conversation?
Yes, everything has to be perfectly done. It's bizarre as hell. It makes no sense, but it only makes sense right at the end because that's when the villain, who's super duper smart, is like seeing the connections where you're just like telling her what you did. It's like
basically Watson telling Sherlock Holmes everything, and Sherlock
Watson's like,
works.
Watson or Holmes, I baked a cake on Sunday. It's like, okay, and then I fought a royal guard of the palace. And you're like, okay, are you on drugs, Watson? Like, it's just this constant random event. And then eventually it clues in on her mind, and it's anyway. For me, it was fulfilling because I wanted to know what happens. I passed the game several times naturally, but it's one of those games which are so customizable. It's about twice as, if not 3 times, more complicated as a D&D, real time with pause isometric game like Baldur's Gate or
yeah, sounds pretty great.
If you like those styles of games, it's fantastic. Yeah, it's great stuff. But the DLC they just came out with was absolute garbage. I cannot believe it. I couldn't. All the bad things you don't like about, like, what's the worst thing you don't like about Elden Ring? Imagine they made a DLC just about that.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh God.
It's, if you check it out, it's called it's a stupid pretentious title. I can't remember what it's called. And everyone in the Steam is just bashing the shit out of it, so rightfully so. Anyway, guys, check out Marc's channel. It's in the description. In case you don't know, he does do video reviews for what's your person you do video reviews for, Marc?
Geeks and Gamers, although for the most part I've just been doing like the odd I actually a couple Elden Ring videos where I do show people how to get like the Sword of Night and Flame and stuff on the Gaming with Geeks sub channel, and I'll do streams with Geeks and Gamers, but I've actually been trying to focus on my own channel for the last little bit. It just since August, since about August, I've been working on a documentary on the entire Metroid franchise.
Ooh.
That I was planning to have done before Metroid Dread came out, but it ended up turning into such a long script with so much detail that I was in school for the last bit of 2021, so it's turned into a much larger project, but it's on its way to being finished now. So I'm hoping to have it done within the next few weeks. But it's gonna be probably about maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours long, and it's gonna cover every game in the series, including spin-offs.
Fantastic.
Oh, cool.
Cool stuff. Okay, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I know very rarely I get to talk to not only Crazy Philosopher because it was a schedule, but we never had Marc on before. So thanks, Marc, for popping on. That was great.
Yeah, great to talk to you.
And
thank you for having me.
Check out his channel for more. Obviously, you're playing more Elden Ring, so that's going to be an ongoing thing for the next year at least. So
yeah, that might be the next project after the Metroid thing. I'm just like, oh man, I might have to be reviewing Elden Ring for the next year.
Well,
I'm in the process of writing the review.
And yes, Crazy Philosopher, you'll be doing a review on our website, so that's cool. So thanks, guys, for tuning in. I don't know if we're having a stream tomorrow, but definitely on Friday, in case we have... Mateus tells me what the schedule is, and we always screw it up, so who knows? We might have something. You guys vote on it, and we'll recommend it. But
it works out somehow.
Eventually, we'll get around to our normal streams. But thank you so much, guys. Talk to you real soon. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.